Well, another week, another video. This week we are going to do a bit of a book review slash rant. So, the reason why I started reading this book, and I'll tell you what it is in a second, relates to a blog post I did a little while back, maybe a month ago, from date of recording. And it was talking about how I was trying to get back into my old morning routine because way back when, in the beginning of 2020, I had developed this morning routine where I would get up at 4:30, go for a walk at the park, it was only 2 streets away, do that, come home, meditate, do all my mindfulness and consciousness and gratefulness activities and techniques and things as such. Then I would do a little bit of reading and among some other things, and even then still I would have an hour or two left over where I could just do things like send an email to that person or read that thing that I needed to read for uni, or do a little bit of uni work or whatever, or do some of my creative writing or whatever it necessarily would be. I could fit in some extra time into my day, which I normally wouldn't get, to do those things I really wanted to do or really needed to get done. And in situations where it was just if I waited till in the afternoon, I'd be way too tired to do anything about it, or I'd be more likely to make an excuse as to not do it. So when someone offered me this book called The 5 a.m. Club by a person called Robin Sharma, I was like, look, I can tell already it's a self-development book, so right up my alley, I'll give that a shot. So, long story short, do I think you should read this book? Do I think you should buy this book? No. Do not put yourself through the torture that is reading this book. Which it is painful to say that because, and I'll get to that part after the rant. Let me just go through the rant first. The way it is written is just a painful experience. It is honestly like pulling nails with a bloody pair of tweezers. It is so painful. And the reason why is because you can tell immediately that this is this guy's creative endeavor. This is his foray into the really creative writing thing, space. And he wanted to obviously mix and meld that with his whole self-development shtick and knowledge and teachings, and do that. And in theory you might think that could potentially work, or you might even think, well, Jordan, you do creative writing, who do you think you are to judge someone else's work? The reason why I think I can is because I keep those two things separate. I don't really try and push the two together. And the reason why, and I can see what he was going for, and I can see it, but it just is so painful to watch. So there's only 4 major characters in the book, and none of them actually are given names except for one of them. So pretty much just to give a basic rundown of the script. So this entrepreneur who, this young female entrepreneur, hashtag girl boss, is running this company, but she's all depressed because these investors in the company are trying to kick her out and they want her dead or something along those lines. And she was thinking about committing suicide, but she got a ticket or a pass to go see this motivational speaker who in the book they refer to as the spellbinder. And she goes to it, right? This is her last ditch, after this I'm going to end my life if this doesn't work out. So she goes to the thing, she meets this guy, attends the seminar. Seminar goes great, she really loves it, and then, the spellbinder or the guy on stage passes, has a heart attack on stage and seemingly dies, right? And she happens to be sitting next to this artist dude, and it's just the stereotypical dude with black combat boots with cargo shorts, dreads, a little bit overweight, and is a little bit into too much into the technicalities of music and the technical and how it all works, and into the technicalities of art, and a little bit too much for someone who doesn't really have that kind of art curator vibe, but whatever. So in the end, they end up striking conversation. this borderline homeless dude comes up, everyone else has left the venue because, oh my God, this guy's like, had a heart attack. Everyone else has left the venue. The two of them are just talking, the artist and the entrepreneur. And they then meet this hobo guy, this like homeless man. And then he starts talking all this stuff that was like, pretty much what the Spellbinder, the guy on stage, was saying. And he's like, yeah, yada, yada, yada. He's how I made, like, this Spellbinder guy is how I made my first $1 billion. And the two of them, the entrepreneur and the artist, are like, are you kidding me? Like, $1 billion? But then they see that the guy's got, like, some fucking, like, Rolex watch or some shit. And it's like, well, that watch is worth $400,000. And in the end, he's like, well, here's this crazy adventure I can give you with you. You can come to me with my tropical island on a private jet and yada, 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 you can swim with the dolphins and I'll teach you my techniques, what I learnt from the Spellbinder guy and, completely recreate your life. So the two of them are skeptical, the artist and the entrepreneur, but in the end they rock up the next day and he says, well, where do we meet? So they ask the hobo, where do we meet? And then he goes, we meet here outside the front of the convention center, 5 a.m. So 5 a.m. club, you get the meaning there? Yeah, sweet. So, yeah, the symbolism, right? So from that point, they rock up, a chauffeur comes, they get flown via private jet, yada, yada, yada. It spends the next 315 pages doing this whole story of, it's just painful. Every page, or every second page, has 2 quotes on it that they try to pass off in just natural conversation. It's just yeah, and this is what Albert Einstein said, and recounts a paragraph borderline, quote, and then there'll be a little bit of back and forth between the characters, and then that will prompt another character to say, yeah, and James Blake said this, and it just goes on like that for so many pages that it's just no one would ever talk like this. It's just painful. Please stop. And the worst part about it is there is actually some good stuff in here, and that's what is most painful. So Rant's over. Don't buy this book. I had a friend try and read it. They got about 15 pages and were like, I can't do this. You try. But I'm the kind of person where I start a book, I have to finish it. So I went through the torture, so you don't have to. But the craziest thing about it is there are really good principles and things that are in this book. Now, it would be ideal if this book was instead cut down from 315 pages down to about 50 to 60 pages and just focused on the principles and the techniques that he talks about. Because when he actually talks about that stuff, it is genuinely, it's genuine gold. It is things you would want to know, but the amount of digging through the crap that you have to do, you have to go through 30 to 40 pages of crap to get, one good bit of one gem, which is just not worth it. The payoff is not worth it in the long run. But whatever. So Rant's over. Let's get to what he was actually talking about and what's good. So 5 a.m. So you ideally want to get up early in the morning just because of the sheer fact that you get more hours in the day. Everyone complains about how they're so busy, got so many things going on, and the reality is there's a difference between being busy and being productive. A lot of people are busy with filling useless crap into their life and then just saying that they don't have the time to do, the things they really want to do. And then they wake up one day and realize their life is pretty much over and that it was all for nothing. And that sucks. So waking up at that early time slot, gives you so much more hours in the days. Because when, other people are waking up at 7, maybe 8 o'clock, you're 2 to 3 hours ahead of them. You've just got more time to play with. And then on top of that, you've also got the great, almost stillness of that hour. At 5 a.m, it's still dark. And I've been doing it for ever since I put that blog post up, or have been trying to get closer to it. And it's really something. You go to bed and it's dark, and you wake up and it's dark. But there's something about when you wake up in the dark like that at 5 a.m. that it's just it's such a calm stillness to everything that it's just you don't even feel oh man, I want to go back to bed. You do for the first 2 seconds when you wake up, but as long as you get up out of bed and you throw the covers off and you just get up and go for a walk or something, oxygenate the body to, wake it up and stuff like that. As long as you do something like that, within, 5 minutes, you feel amped, you feel wired because you're just wow, it's a thing of cold water to the face, but not with the painful experience of it being cold. Oh, well, maybe a little bit cold because of, it being so early in the morning. But so you get that quiet solitude, which is really good. So that means you can focus on things. The other thing that is another great kind of component of what he talks about is, the kind of 20-20-20 rule, which is 20 minutes of meditating, 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of reading or like learning of some sort. So you have this kind of, when you wake up, you have this hour of where it's dedicated to just you kind of getting the basics done, you know what I mean? It's like spending a little bit of time reading so you're learning something new, spending a bit of time meditating and doing mindfulness activities to kind of calm your brain and really deal with your emotions and kind of just level yourself out, and then exercise to one, give you energy and also to stay healthy and live a longer life. Because that's another thing he kind of talks about and is worth noting, is that if you are unhealthy and you're not exercising and things like that, you're shortening your lifespan. It's like you can look at it and say, oh, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. But if you want to achieve something in your life and if there's things you want to get done, you need time, you need longevity. And if you completely squander it and just throw it all away, then you might get to, and look, you could say, well, you get hit by a bus any day, but then that's true. Those are things you can't really plan or prevent against. But I'm not saying you hide away from everything, but there are behaviors that do shorten your life, and there are remedies to those that will extend it, or at least mean that you're healthier for longer. So that's a huge and kind of important thing that he kind of talks about. And then I think maybe one of the last ones we'll talk about, because maybe we'll just leave it at like 3 or 4 gems that kind of came out of it, was that you need to spend in those couple of hours, like early on in the morning, you need to really detach yourself from technology, because what we know about the human brain is that you only have a set amount of attention span, like a day. You have like a bandwidth of attention. And then when you're when you wake up in the morning and you check your emails and you check your text notifications and yada, 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 and you're sending this off and you switch the news on and while you're making a cup of coffee and, you listen to what's going on in the world and what happened overnight and who said this to what and all of that. That's all these little like nips away at your attention span that you lose. So as the day goes out or goes on, you've got less of your attention span to deal with, to work with. So when you go to work or when you're trying to, do something, important, you're just not operating at that same level. Like you just have got less to work with, just because your brain is just going to get fried at a certain point, just attention span overload, because you've spread it across so many things throughout the day that you just won't be able to focus. You won't be able to get good work done, and that is going to kind of handicap you. It's going to be you shooting yourself in the foot. So he really talks about limiting how much you use your devices, especially in the early hours of the day. Like you don't want to be using them early on, because it cuts it away. It cuts your attention away at the earliest opportunity when you should be focusing on things like reading, maybe listening to an educational podcast or a meditative podcast or something like that. Exercising, doing things that don't require you to have a device or a screen in front of you, or playing off in the background. And then in connection to that, another thing is that, and this will be the last one, is sleep. So yes, getting up at 5 a.m. seems tough, and you go, oh man, it's so hard, man. Oh, actually, sorry, this one and one more. This one and one more thing. And I think the last one is actually probably one of the most important ones to actually address. So sleep is super important. Getting up at 5 a.m. is rough to start with. I will agree. It's tough, but the longer you do it, every day that you do it, and I had to start by going from, okay, I'm waking up at 7. Instead, I'm going to wake up at 6:45. And then the next day I was like, okay, 6:30, 6:15, 6. And then, so on and so forth till I got to 5 o'clock. And look, even now there are days where I wake up at, 5:20, 5:30. But for the most part, I'm pretty consistent around getting at that 5 o'clock part. And I'm even thinking about going maybe to 4:30 where I originally was back in 2020. But just because you're waking up early doesn't mean that you should be sleep depriving yourself. It's not like you stay up till midnight and then you wake up at 5 a.m. You're only operating on 5 hours sleep, because that's going to do you in the long run. Not getting enough sleep shortens your life, and also it doesn't fully recharge your attention span if you're not getting good sleep. So what he recommends is probably go to bed around about 10 o'clock or around about that point. So what that usually means is around about 9 p.m. at night, you need to stop looking at your devices. No TV, no laptops, no nothing, no phones, no nothing. Because the blue light is going to keep you awake. And I've noticed that myself. Like when I switch off my devices and don't use them, like I set my alarm at 8 p.m. at night, I set it for the next morning. When I don't look at my devices, I fall asleep instantly. Well, pretty much instantly. Like, a few minutes onto the pillow and I'm gone. And then I wake up feeling fresh. But if I look at a device maybe at 9:30, it keeps me up for at least probably an hour before I actually get to probably fall under asleep. And I even use one of those applications on the laptop which dulls the amount of blue light that the screen pumps out late at night. Even with that kind of technological assist, doesn't work. The screen alone is just enough to wire your brain and keep you awake. So yeah, devices off 8:30, stop the devices, go to bed around about 10:30, wake up at that 5 a.m. mark. It's going to be tough, but trust me, it is worth it in the long run. And now the last part I want to talk about, and this is probably one of the most important, is when it relates to habits and instilling a habit such as this. So when it comes to getting rid of habits, like bad habits, or instilling good ones that you do want to make permanent, there's about a 63-day process. So the first 21 days, it's going to be difficult. And what he says, he describes this whole process, this whole 3-step stage process, as all change is messy at the start. No, it's difficult at the start, messy in the middle, and beautiful at the end. So when it comes to setting a routine like the 21 days, like waking up at 5 a.m., the first 21 days of you trying to do it are going to be the hardest you have to do. The next 21 days, which is the next 3 weeks after that, in the middle is going to be messy. It's where you've kind of got it down, but there are going to be moments where you have doubts, moments where you're like, maybe I can just get that little bit more sleep in, maybe just an extra hour. But no, you need to stay resilient and you need to stay, persistent through it. And then once you finally get to the last, the last 3 weeks, the 3 weeks after that, and you get to the kind of stage where it just becomes automatic, that's when the change becomes beautiful, because it just flows naturally. It doesn't require any effort of you. It just becomes automatic, and you don't even need to think. It's just your devices will turn off at 8:30 by themselves, just because it will be so normal to you. You'll go to bed at 10. You'll wake up at 5. You'll do that hour of power in the morning where you're doing that exercise, that meditating, that learning. And you can probably, it doesn't have to necessarily be 20 minutes each. You can maybe make it 30 minutes depending on how much time you got. But like I said at the start, I don't recommend you buy this book. It is, if you're a masochistic person who just likes self-torture, then go all for it. I'll lend you my copy. Just give me your address and I'll post it, because I sure as hell don't want this in my house anymore. But don't buy it, but take the lessons that I learnt from it and I was reminded of it, from it, and you use that for your own benefit. And because that's what this channel is all about. It is about me diving through the dumpsters of self-development to give you the gems, the diamonds in the rough. So take that, kiddies, and see you next week. Bye.